All right, welcome to episode 50 of Before the Battle. My name is Nick Baldwin. Joining me, as always, a writer for Sportsnet.ca. He is Go Paolo. Paolo, how's it going?
How's it going, Nick? I would like to say that I'm very excited for UFC 205, regardless of what's happening around at least the social political climate around North America, not just America, but we're not the politics podcast. Nobody cares about that for now, at least for this show. So let's just get straight to the fights, guys.
Yes, a lot has changed. A lot is happening. This is, I guess you could say, the biggest Before the Battle episode to date, most landmark episode 50. We've made it. And we have a new president as of January 20th, Donald Trump. Well, I don't, and Paulo doesn't. We're up here in Canada, but Wes does. Donald Trump is the new U.S. president. That sounds too crazy to believe it, but it is true. Now, joining us, huge MMA fan, does a bit of writing for MMAsecond.com. Back on the program for the second time, he is Wes Riddle. Wes, how's it going?
Pretty good, guys. Thanks again for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. Not too worried about the election. I'm not a big guy into politics, so we're just going to kind of let that go.
And nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. I don't even know who Donald Trump is, right?
Who knows what's happening in the political world? I'm not following it, but we're going to just see what happens. Hopefully I'm alive in 4 years, and if I am, then I'm perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Really excited to talk fights with you guys, and thanks again for having me on.
Absolutely. Something happened down south last night. I don't know what happened, but we have a great card, a massive card, the greatest card of all time. UFC 205 finally slated to go down this weekend. We got the main event, a super fight, lightweight versus featherweight champions, Eddie Alvarez, Conor McGregor. How nuts is this? The same week, Donald Trump gains presidency or president-elect, whatever you want to call it. He's running the country. Same week, Conor McGregor, Eddie Alvarez are getting at it. Same week, episode 50 of Before the... How crazy is this? Let's dive right into UFC 205, though. We'll start out with a fight that, hey, it doesn't really compare with some of the other fights we're going to get to later on in the program, but we got to touch on it anyways. We got Liz Carmouche taking on Caitlin Chookagian in the first fight of the night on UFC Fight Pass, the early prelims. Paulo, I'll start with you. I don't expect you to spend hours breaking this one down, but who do you got, Liz Carmouche or Caitlin Chookagian?
Oh, I actually spent the last 17 hours watching these two fighters just to break this down in pure elaborate fashion. That's sarcasm, of course. Nothing against the lady. Paulo. I am kind of growing into be a fan of Chookagian. I think this girl can make some noise in this division. I think it's still a bit early in her career for to say she's a future contender, wherever that is. So Carmouche is like a big step up because Carmouche is, before the Holly Holm fight happened for Ronda Rousey, was Rousey's toughest fight. I think she had her in a headlock there. And I know Miesha Tate went for 3 rounds with Rousey, but she was getting tossed around and beat up during those 3 rounds. So I still got Chookagian here. I think she's going to be able to keep the fight standing. She trains with wrestlers a lot, and she's got jiu-jitsu skills. So I think she'll keep the fight standing, use that jab, use that straight, and win a decision here. But if Carmouche rises to the occasion and pulls off an upset, I'm not going to be too shocked about it.
And Wes, who are you picking here, Gorilla or Blonde Fighter? You said off the air just a second ago you actually do have a couple notes on these, so let's hear it.
Yeah, I do have a few notes just to have just in case it gets interesting. So we'll just see. Not too many, though. I just wanted to point out, always love service, people that serve, and Liz Carmouche is one of those people, served in the Marine Corps, which shows that you're a true badass, which is one thing that is really cool about her. But talking about MMA in general, her biggest skill set is looking for the takedowns. She's really good with her takedowns. She had, I think, 5 versus Miesha Tate and also 3 versus Jessica Andrade, who just moved down to the strawweight division, and 2 versus Lauren Murphy in her last fight. And in her last fight, she won that unanimous decision that was somewhat debatable. Or maybe, she did win it. I just wanted to make sure. Then you have Caitlin on the other hand. She's still undefeated. She's undefeated as an amateur. She fought on UFC debut also versus Murphy. They both have unanimous decision wins over her. I think one of the biggest differences in this fight is that Carmouche is stylistically she's going to use her wrestling stylistically use her striking. And who knows if a layoff is going to play a factor for Liz, because she hasn't fought since April of 2015. I have in this fight Liz Carmouche by unanimous decision. I think that she's going to be able to take this fight down to the ground and make it pretty gritty. I don't think Caitlin's going to be able to stand back up. I don't know too many of the other opponents she's fought in her career, but she definitely has a lot of potential, and I do see it. But I'm going with Liz Carmouche in this fight. I think she's going to come back pretty strong in her UFC return.
And I don't have a whole lot to add from what you both said, but I'll go the other way. I'll go Caitlin Chugigan in this fight to win her sophomore sophomore appearance in the UFC against Liz Carmouche. Carmouche, she is a bit of the smaller fighter here, and coming off a layoff, as Wes mentioned, hasn't fought since the Lauren Murphy win, which was a controversial win. Keep in mind, I scored that fight pretty clearly for Murphy. And Chugigan is coming off the win over Lauren Murphy in her debut. I was somewhat impressed in that fight, kept it standing. Murphy never really got going. I give props to Blonde Fighter in that one, and I think she's just going to be able to keep this fight where she wants it, on the feet, and outpoint Liz Carmouche, the veteran of the two, especially UFC experience-wise, for the unanimous decision. Now, next up, the featured UFC Fight Pass prelim. This is actually a really fun lightweight matchup between Jim Miller and Thiago Alves. Thiago Alves is making his lightweight debut in this one. A lot of people maybe aren't too big of fans on the Pitbull dropping down. He once was a sizable welterweight, now dropping down to lightweight for the first time. He is doing it right, though. He's working with Perfecting Athletes, who everything I've heard about Perfecting Athletes has been positive. It seems like they know what they're doing. So Alves is in good hands, but the drop to 155 is still a little bit concerning to me. Paolo, are you going with the American or the Brazilian in this one? Mike, your mic is muted.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, remind me. Yeah, it's one of those token fights in the card where you're just like, you can't even break it down yet because a fighter's going into uncharted waters, so you gotta kind of have to see how he looks like on weigh-in, maybe get a little bit more news on how he's responding and stuff. And I mean, it's hard to say because he's not in that 24-hour, 48-hour time window yet where he completely shrinks and sheds most of the weight off. But I mean, if he's having good progress, then might have to give him the edge because I think he's got a little bit more left in the tank despite his numerous injuries. I think he's still got that snap. He might not have as much of that killer instinct as he used to as before, but he's also got the wrestling to deal with Jim Miller, and he'll be a huge fighter. He'll be so much bigger. He looked like Jim Miller's brother, big brother in there. Because if I remember, he took on Matt Hughes and he knocked him out, and he came in overweight in that fight, and he looked so much bigger than Matt Hughes. And Matt Hughes is, as we know, one of the most dominant former welterweight champions there is. But I'm gonna pick Jim Miller here. I think he's gonna be able to outlast Thiago Alves in a split decision.
Interesting. Wes, are you going with the favorite here? I believe Thiago Alves is the favorite. Last time I checked, I believe he was. Or are you going the other way and agreeing with Paulo? Are you going with Jim Miller?
This is a pretty interesting fight, in my opinion, because we've always seen Jim Miller competing at this weight class, but this is going to be the first time, as you mentioned, Paolo, of Thiago Alves at this weight class. And I think it's going to be very dependent on whether or not Alves is going to be able to make weight. And I think if he does, he's going to have a good shot in this fight. And I haven't really heard anything about what's going on or how he's been able to cut this weight throughout. So getting into it a little bit, Jim Miller, I know he's kind of getting old in his fight career. He has 35 total fights, but also Thiago Alves is getting older in his fight career with 31 total fights. And I think that makes Alves a little bit older in his fighting career is the fact that he has had so many injuries that have hindered him in the past, which was including his fight with Ben Henderson that was scheduled where Alves broke a rib. He also suffered a knee injury the first time he was scheduled to fight Jordan Mean. I think he also had a bicep tear when he was supposed to fight Matt Brown at one point. And then Seth Baczynski, I think – or no, not Seth Baczynski. I think it was against CR. I think he had some kind of injury in that fight as well. So I think Alves is a little older in his fight career. However, I think at this weight class, I think he's going to have definitely a power advantage. I think he's going to be able to be able to keep the fight where he wants to. I think if he's able to take the fight to the ground, because he is solid, that he's going to be able to control Jim Miller on the ground. And Jim Miller is good on the ground with his submissions, but if he can't get a submission in this fight, I think that Alves is going to take it. I have in this fight Thiago Alves by TKO in the second round. I actually think that he's going to be able to catch Miller at some point in this fight. But if he doesn't, I think it's going to be a unanimous decision victory for Thiago Alves.
I'm going with the Pitbull here as well. I'll agree with Wes on this one. And I like him inside the distance. Jim Miller is riding a bit of momentum compared to Alves coming in this fight. He's coming off 2 straight, the win over Takanori Gomi, and then the recent somewhat controversial win over Joe Lozon in August. So he's rebounded pretty nicely from a couple losses in a row, I believe, one being against Diego Sanchez earlier this year. Thiago Alves, on the other hand, has been out for over a year. He hasn't fought since May of 2015 when he got demolished by the natural-born killer, Carlos Condit. He took a lot of damage in that fight, got busted up pretty badly, so maybe the time off is a good thing. Maybe we will see some ring rust. He does seem to be injured. He was injured a lot and then returned in 2014. Looked good. I believe, I forget who he fought, but he looked good in his return, so I'm not too concerned about the ring rust. One thing I am concerned for Alves is, as I mentioned off the top, the weight cut. We've seen these some fighters drop down recently where it's like, that's kind of tight. Gray Maynard being at featherweight being one, Diego Sanchez last year going to 145 being another. They both made weight, but it's still, from what I kind of saw, and that's why Sanchez is now back at lightweight. Thiago Alves, working with perfecting athletes. If this was any step higher than Jim Miller at this point in 2016, I would go against Alves just because of the potential unhealthy weight cut. But it is Jim Miller. He is on a decline slowly but surely. Thiago Alves, very dangerous on the feet. The power should be there at lightweight, even more powerful for the weight class. I'm going to go Thiago Alves on the feet here. I think he'll knock out Jim Miller either in the first or the second round. Now, next up, kicking off the FS1 prelims, we got Vicente Luque taking on Belal Muhammad. Luke is stepping up here on short notice for Lyman Good, who recently was temporarily suspended by USADA for a potential violation of their anti-doping policy. Vicente Luque and Belal Muhammad. Paolo, who are you going in this welterweight matchup?
This is going to be a really great fight, man. This might even be the best fight for the prelims, actually. Unless one of them gets knocked out, then that might be the performance of the night. I'm going to give the edge to Luque here, the underdog, the slight underdog. I really love both fighters, man. Belal Muhammad, this guy has solid boxing. He's a very precise fighter, despite the fact that he also likes to throw bombs while he's in there. So he hits for power and hits for precision, although he doesn't really have the finishing ability that Luque has from their small sample sizes. This guy has some pop in his punches. He's getting better. He's only 24, even though he's been around for a while. He started competing when he was 18 years old, I believe. And he can finish fights from top position. He's got some of those nasty chokes. I think he can either win this fight if he rocks Belal and probably put some kind of a choke on him, or Belal could outlast him for 3 rounds. Maybe he'll lose the first 2 or the first and a half anyway, and then he'll start taking over, steal the second, win the third. He was in a dogfight with Montano, and I think Luque is like twice the fighter Montano is. So it'll probably be something like that in the first, but Luque might just win within the first 2 rounds. So let's give it to Luque by finishing one of the first 2 rounds.
Very interesting, Wes. I have a slight feeling you're going to go the other way and pick Belal Muhammad. Let me know if I am correct there. Who are you picking?
I think you happen to be correct on this one. So just to bring it up real quick, Vicente Luque, I know he competed on the Ultimate Fighter 21, which is American Top Team versus the Black Zillions. And I think he lost on the show. But then when he came back to the UFC after he lost his debut fight versus Michael Graves, he got that first-round submission win in the rematch, kind of like a rematch. So he has that going against him. He also, not against him, but for him, he also has 2 bonus wins already, 2 performance of the nights, and that was against Hassan, and also his it was his last fight, which was against Hector Urbina, where he was able to knock him out in just a minute. And that was pretty cool, too. That was actually probably one of my favorite one-punch knockouts so far of 2016. If you haven't seen it, probably go check it out on UFC Fight Pass. Really cool knockout. Now, just talking about – also, one more thing to add to him real quick. I forgot about Luque. He's only 24 years old. 24 years old, and where he is right now in the UFC, that is fantastic. He definitely has a big future ahead no matter what happens in this fight. Bilal Muhammad, he, like you mentioned, Nick, he was supposed to fight Lyman Good. But now he's encountering Luque on short notice. Muhammad, he was the Titan FC welterweight champion, where he finished Steve Carl, I think is who it was, in the 4th round to take that belt. Then makes his UFC debut against Alan Jouban, and he got dropped multiple times in that fight. But guess what? He kept on going throughout those 3 rounds and gave it to him. He was landing some shots of his own, and despite being dropped and times in that fight where it looked like he could have been finished, he held it together, and he was able to just usually lose a unanimous decision. But in his last fight, he came back and fought Augusto Montano and was able to finish him in the 3rd round. He has a really good overhand right, crisp striking, and he's also good at wrestling. He likes to utilize his wrestling, too, in his fights. It's going to be a very close fight. I am, like I mentioned, leaning towards Muhammad in this one. I think that if he can this fight can definitely turn into a dogfight, but if it doesn't, I think Muhammad's going to be a little bit more smart on timing his shots and being able to move around the octagon and also be able to time some takedowns. If he does do that, he has to be careful of the submissions from Luque, but if he is able to avoid those, I think he can squeeze out a unanimous decision victory, and that's my pick.
Yeah, this is a really, really tough fight to call. Vicente Luque has been looking on fire in his last 3 fights. He debuted and put up and lost by decision against Michael Graves. Put up an okay effort, but suffered the loss in that one. But since then, 3 straight, all by fight, as Wes mentioned, Hector Urbina 1st round knockout, Alvaro Herrera, Hader Hassan. So no top names or really notable names, but still big finish wins, and that's something you need as a up and coming fighter. Him being only 24 years old, as you guys mentioned. Bilal Muhammad, as I don't know what to make of a guy like Bilal Muhammad. He shows in his Alan Jouban fight that he has a heck of a lot of heart. This guy, he's a bit of a slow starter. He gets going midway through the fight. That's why the Titan FC championship fight was so good to him, because he had those extra rounds to really get going, and that's when he ended up finishing his opponent, Steve Carl, in that 4th round. He didn't have that 5-round opportunity against Alan Jouban, and came up short. But he does have some finishing power as well, not as much as Luque. Luque is very dangerous on the feet and on the ground. He's very well-rounded, a bit more well-rounded than Muhammad. But I think Muhammad, I feel like he will be able to take over later on in the fight. Luque may win the 1st round and does have a good chance of stopping Muhammad in the 1st round. We did see Muhammad get rocked. So even though Muhammad has a good chin, clearly, if you get rocked, Luque could finish him. It's possible. If Luque doesn't finish him in the 1st round, though, I do see the tide sort of turning. Luque may tire a little bit. Muhammad has better cardio, in my opinion. Muhammad should be able to take over in the later rounds and score a unanimous decision win. Next up, we got Rafael Natal, number 14 at middleweight, taking on the Barbarian, Tim Boesch, at middleweight. He was actually back in middleweight his last time out, but nonetheless, he's now a middleweight fighter once again. Wes, I'll start with you this time. Tim Boesch or Rafael Natal. Quite a bizarre middleweight matchup. Who are you picking?
Yeah, this is definitely a weird middleweight matchup. Never really thought I'd see these two fight, especially on UFC 205, but it's going to happen. The two have pretty similar careers. They tend to struggle when they get to the higher level of competition. Let's talk about Rafael Natal for a minute. He does have some good clinch work. Ground game. in his last fight, which came back in April of 2016. This year, he fought Robert Whittaker at UFC 197, and he struggled a little bit in the first 2 rounds, but one thing that he did use effectively was his leg kicks, and that slowed down Whittaker actually in the 3rd round. And Whittaker's one of the best middleweights that we have in this weight class. But he utilized his leg kicks really well. Also had some good performances against Kevin Casey. I know he's not the greatest fighter there is, but he did well with his wrestling and also his striking game. I think he also a win over Uriah Hall. I think that was pretty close. But then again, Uriah Hall didn't really initiate too much. Now, Tim Boetsch, on the other hand, he is known for his wrestling. That's his just number one thing about his game that stands out more than anything else. And also his ability to sometimes take punishment and be able to capitalize later in the fight with just a huge overhand right or left, because he has a lot of power in all those punches. And that's what we saw him catch Brad Tavares with back in 2014, and also when he came back and won against Yushin Okami back in 2012. Tim Boetsch is coming off that win over the late Josh, and I think he got that 2nd round finish, which was with his ground and pound. That's definitely a good aspect of his game. But if he can't get the fight to the ground, I think this is going to be Natal's fight to win. I went a little risky because I'm not really sure exactly who I wanted to pick in this fight. I have Tim Boetsch. I think Tim Boetsch is going to be able to catch Natal either in the 2nd or the 3rd round with one of his punches. I know he has a lot of power, and Natal's good, has gone down before. I think it's going to happen. Then again, Tim Boetsch has really struggled. He lost to Ed Herman, and that's not really a good loss to have on your resume. So don't really know what's going to happen. But in this fight, I do have Tim Boetsch. I'm leaning his way, 2nd round TKO.
Very interesting. Paolo, are you going to agree and pick the Barbarian, the veteran, or are you going to go with Sapo, the Brazilian, Rafael Natal?
You know, funny thing is about Tim Boetsch, I feel like this guy fights so much, but at the same time, like, we keep wondering, why the hell is Tim Boetsch still in the UFC? He's won only 3 of his last 9 fights. And I know we keep saying Diego Sanchez has lost 8 in a row or something like that, but look at Tim Boetsch's last wins. CB Dalloway, that was a split decision. That was way back in 2013. He won that fight because CB Dalloway had like 5 points deducted from him or something. I forgot who was reffing that fight, but that was one of those ridiculous fights. And he wins by split decision even though he lost all 3 rounds. Then loses to Rockhold, beats Brad Tavares after getting his ass whooped, and just lands a miracle punch and puts him out. Loses his next 3 fights, and then beats Josh Saman because Josh Saman got himself like in a bad position, and Tim Boetsch basically capitalized and just pounded him out. So what Tim Boetsch proves is that this guy is super tough and kind of hard to put away by fighters who aren't on the elite level. So if you give him that room to exploit a mad mistake you make, you're probably gonna get finished for it. And I mean, they're middleweights. Come on, they're 185 fighters. They're not 115 fighters. So Sapo is one of those fighters that could actually make a mistake because he does have brain farts when he fights for whatever reason. But he's the better all-around fighter here. So I think more often than not, he's gonna win this fight, probably by decision or even submission in the middle rounds. Let's go with round 3. Maybe he subs Tim Boetsch at some point.
Do I really have to break this one down? I guess I do. This is going to be a very gritty, grinding, and probably just flat-out bad fight. Phil McKenzie, he does some insane breakdowns of the classic middleweight matchup. This would fall under that category. So I imagine he's going to have an insane prediction on the Bloody Elbow predictions later this week. So I'll definitely give that a read if that is the case. Rafael Natal, he's kind of he's obviously good on the ground, getting better on the feet. Tim Boetsch, we kind of know his game now. He's a veteran, declining. He doesn't have a whole lot, but power on the feet, takes you down and pounds you out, sort of thing. Does he have enough in the gas tank to beat a guy like Rafael Natal? Well, it's a coin toss fight in my opinion. It's very close. I'll say yes, though. I'll go out on a bit of a limb here and pick the Barbarian to get the job done. I maybe finish strikes. I don't know. Tim Boetsch, I get the feeling it'll be the other way, and Bosch will either hurt. I think Bosch will hurt Natal on the feet, and then get into some sort of mount or top position and just pound out Sapo for the win. This is a tough one to call. Really a coin toss fight, and probably one we're not going to be talking about on Monday morning. Next up, despite all of the fantastic fights yet still to come, this is a fight we probably will be talking about on Monday morning. Khabib Nurmagomedov taking on Michael Johnson. What a heck of a lightweight matchup. Paolo, I'll start with you. Are you going with the Russian, the Eagle, Khabib Nurmagomedov, or the sizable underdog in this one, Michael the Menace Johnson?
See, anyone that knows me, especially maybe what's it called, Buki Beatdowns, Paul Shag, knows that I really am not a big fan of Khabib. And shout out to Paul Shag because he's like the only Khabib fan, a diehard, very passionate Khabib fan, I should say, that rivals the fandom of Conor McGregor fans. Okay, maybe not that hardcore, but you know what I'm saying, an intelligible level. And with Khabib, this is how I'm gonna I think about Khabib fights. It's him taking the guy down repeatedly over and over. That's one scenario. Second scenario is him trying to take the guy down repeatedly over and over, like the Gleison Tebow fight. The third scenario is him taking the guy down once or twice because the guy never gets up anymore. That's how a Khabib fight will usually end up. Now, tell me, does that sound like an exciting fight to you? Not to me, man. I mean, if WWE is scripted for a reason, pro wrestling, it's because if pro wrestling wasn't scripted, a lot of their wrestling fights will be boring, kind of like that. But I mean, what's Khabib gonna do? Is he suddenly gonna throw crazy shit, spinning shit, or something like that? Is he gonna suddenly put himself in harm's way just so he can please the fans and get his title shot? Who knows? Crazier things have happened. But if he tries that, I think he's gonna get knocked out. And I'm getting a feeling right now that he might try to engage Michael Johnson on his feet a little bit longer than he should. And he might take a little bit of a licking at some point. But he always have the wrestling to fall back on. So this is his fight to win, as they say. But let's go with upset here. Let's go with Michael Johnson here by decision.
Very interesting. I was looking forward to breaking this one down because I wanted to see if we were going to get a menace pick here, and we have. Wes, are you going to back up Paulo's breakdown here and pick the Michael Johnson as well? My good old Nurmagomedov for the win.
I'm going to actually switch it up. I'm going with Khabib in this fight. Let's see, what can I talk about Khabib besides the fact he's 23-0 undefeated? We already know that. We already know that he has a win over the former champion, Rafael dos Anjos, who we just watched fight last week. Yeah, sorry. I meant to say Darrell Horcher. His last fight was against Darrell Horcher back in April, and that was a fight that he took the only fight that he's had since April of 2014. In April, that was his fight against RDA. And that was the last time we had seen him compete. Then he comes back against Darrell Horcher. We already know what Khabib's style is, and that's going to be wrestling. And he's very, very good at control when he gets the fighters down. He's pretty good at being able to hold them down. That is one of the biggest holes in Michael Johnson's game. Michael Johnson is fantastic on the feet. I actually did not pick him because I thought Poirier was a little bit better of a striker. Completely shocked me. First round knockout for Michael Johnson. Very impressive win. And that did open my eyes. I feel like Michael Johnson does have a shot in this fight. But if he gets taken down, and I think the fight maybe gets past the first round and maybe halfway through the second, I don't think Michael Johnson will have a chance. He's not really that good. With his submissions, he's more just known for his punching power and his striking abilities. So in this fight, I have Khabib getting the unanimous decision win. And I think if he does win, there's going to be some talk about the title shot, but it's going to be very close. We don't know if he's going to get it. Don't know if Ferguson's going to get it. It's just going to be dependent on what the UFC is going to do. So, Khabib by unanimous decision.
Yes, or maybe Conor McGregor loses to Alvarez, but they keep giving McGregor the shot, wanting him to become a two-weight champion. Who knows? It's Conor McGregor. Anything can happen. And we'll get to that later on in the show, of course. Khabib Nurmagomedov and Michael Johnson. I really, really love this fight. And I wish this was on the main card, honestly. No disrespect to Miesha Tate and Rico Pennington. Of course, Tate deserves to be on this card. Just was a champion not too long ago. But this, I feel like Nurmagomedov and Johnson probably deserve that spot there in the opening fight on the main card. But you
want to put the watchers to sleep? No, you don't open with Khabib and Michael Johnson because Khabib's just going to wrestle the crap out of Michael Johnson for 3 rounds. And, But I get what you're saying.
I'm not expecting fireworks, and again, we'll get to this later, but I'm not expecting fireworks from Tate and Pennington, but it is what it is. The card lineup is set, and I can't complain too much because we are getting all the same fights. I sometimes complain, oh, this fight should be main event, this fight should be co-main, blah, 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 blah. Why is this featured Fight Pass? Who cares? Like, the only people it affects is the fighters, and yeah, that matters somewhat, but I'm still watching Khabib, I'm still watching Miesha Tate. It's all good. My pick here is Khabib Nurmagomedov, but this is a close one. Michael Johnson, a solid plus 250 underdog, right around there. Let me look, plus 240 with comeback on Khabib at minus 280. So I can see why Khabib is a nearly 3-1 favorite here. It does make sense, although Michael Johnson on paper, he has the tools to upset Khabib. Khabib, his biggest weakness is on the feet, of course. And Johnson, he's known for being on the feet and being a great, great striker with lots of power on the feet. And speed is key as well. Johnson land a bomb early on Khabib. It's very, very possible. But Khabib has the takedowns. Does Michael Johnson have the takedown defense to stop the Khabib takedowns? That's the major question going into this one. My answer is no. Khabib will be able to get Michael Johnson down to the ground. He'll be able to make this a grinding affair just how he likes it, and he'll pick up a decision win over Michael Johnson. I honestly think this fight is closer than the odds indicate, though. Michael Johnson's so dangerous on the feet, he could pull this one off. I wasn't thrilled with Khabib's win over Darrell Horcher just because it is Darrell Horcher. I understand Khabib coming off the layoff perhaps wasn't 100%. I expect 100% Khabib in this one. Speaking of the title shot, this is a big, big fight with title implications because if Khabib wins, the race is on between him and Tony Ferguson. I would lean towards Ferguson getting it, but if Johnson wins, then it'll absolutely be Ferguson. Very interesting lightweight matchup, but my pick here is Khabib Nurmagomedov to make it gritty, make it grinding. Khabib Nurmagomedov for the unanimous decision victory. And headlining the FS1 prelims, we got a hell of a featherweight fight. Frankie the Answer Edgar taking on Jeremy Little Heathen Stevens. This is a really fun matchup. Stevens wanted it. Edgar accepted. Paolo, who are you picking here?
Oh, now this fight. I'm seeing a lot of people and very sharp bettors out there who are backing a Jeremy Stevens win here. Maybe a Jeremy Stevens knockout here. And I think he was plus 500 to win by knockout, which I think is pretty generous because that's probably the only way he's going to win here. Actually, no, I take that back because he could actually hurt Frankie early, and Frankie doesn't get knocked out because Frankie Edgar is Frankie Edgar, and he just keeps him going on. You're going to have to put him out cold, which is what Jeremy Stevens obviously said. He was the pound-for-pound best guy at doing that, although he's only put like 2 guys out cold in the last 7 years or something like that. And 2 of those guys, and 2 guys he knocked out cold with his fist, which is like RDA. And who was the other guy, actually? Let me quiz you guys. Who was the other guy?
Jason.
No. With his fist, he knocked out Hani Jason with a head kick. Who was the other guy he put out with his fist, like out cold, like?
Well, it wasn't Bermudez because that was a knee.
Nope, no, that was a TKO. That was Bermudez wasn't like out cold.
Yeah, and it wasn't Hani because that was a head kick.
Yeah, and then the other guy was RDA. That's the one everyone knows about. Okay, it was Marcus Davis when he moved down to 155 division because he was getting knocked out at welterweight. He tried cutting down. That was past his prime Marcus Davis, former shell. His chin was gone at that time. So, like before the hype gets too much on Jeremy Stevens landing that one punch to like knock Frankie Edgar out cold, and Frankie Edgar's never been knocked out cold. But I know there's a first time for everything and all that stuff. It's just like it's a slim chance that he's going to do it. But he can do it. It's not going to shock me. I mean, this is prime time for Jeremy Stevens to shock the world right now. But let's go with the conventional wisdom here and pick Frankie Edgar to win the decision here. Maybe even if he gets hurt early in the fight, he'll pull through and win. Maybe a draw, maybe. I don't know.
Perfect. Wes, are you going with the answer here? Is he the answer to this fight? Or do you think Jeremy Stephens will be able to pull off the upset?
I think that was the perfect description by you, Paolo. I guess with Stephens, when it comes to Stephens, the biggest aspect of his game that makes him so good is his striking. But besides that, I feel like he doesn't have that many tools, especially when he's going up against a former champion that is Frankie Edgar. Now, let's take a look at Frankie Edgar real quick. The last fight that he had was against Jose Aldo back at UFC 200, big event that's ever gone down in history. And he lost a unanimous decision. I actually picked Frankie in this fight, and he did not really impress me too much. Aldo was able to outstrike him throughout the entire 5-minute round, or throughout the 25. But, however, we take a look when he fought Chad Mendes, he was able to knock him out, kind of get that flash knockout that we don't see too often. And that was very impressive, too. Fought Uriah Faber back in 2015, won a unanimous decision. He utilizes his wrestling fantastic, and that's, I think, going to be very important in this fight when he does face Jeremy Stephens. Stephens, in his fight with Renan Barão, which Renan used to be considered one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters in the world, he was able to tag Renan. I don't know if it was in the first round. I think it was in the second round, but from that moment on, he took over the fight, and he was able to win a unanimous decision. However, Stephens has also struggled a little bit with other strikers, such as Max Holloway, who we did accuse of running in that fight, but Holloway was still able to land some pretty decent strikes. Also struggled against Charles Oliveira, who just dropped down to featherweight, and also lost a unanimous decision, Cub Swanson. So that right there are 3 strikers. I think in this fight I do have Frankie Edgar. He has a lot of experience, fantastic wrestling, as I did mention. I think in this fight, all he has to do is get the fight to the ground. And if Stephens can't find that one punch or that combo to possibly hurt Edgar in the first round, I don't think he's going to have a chance. So in this fight, I have Frankie Edgar on the UFC pick'em by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty will be a pretty clear-cut win for Frankie Edgar. Jeremy Stephens, yes, of course, he has the one-punch knockout power. Everybody has that one-shot punch chance. Frankie Edgar, not really known for his power, but he did recently put away Chad Mendes not too long ago, less than a year ago. So he does have power, as we all know. So it's not like Stephens is just 10 times the power puncher of Frankie Edgar. Yes, he's known for his one-punch knockout power, but don't sleep on Edgar's power either going into this matchup. Frankie Edgar, all around the better striker. Yeah, Stephens does have a bit more power, but Edgar by far more technical on the feet and just all around the more skilled striker. And the wrestling is really no competition, in my opinion. Edgar by far will be able to will be able to take over in the wrestling department if he so chooses. He's better in the wrestling department than Stephens, 10 times better, in my opinion. Frankie Edgar should be able to pick this one up pretty easily, coming off the loss over Jose Aldo. That was actually a fairly surprising loss to me. I didn't expect him to, 1, lose that fight, and 2, get sort of not completely outclassed, but lose in convincing fashion once again to interim champion Jose Aldo. Jeremy Stephens, though, very different than Jose Aldo. Coming off the win over Renan Barão, he does have the momentum, but we do see him. He has a ceiling. He loses to guys like Max Holloway, who's very close in skill right now to Frankie Edgar. He'll lose to those top guys, Cub Swanson back in 2014. So he has a ceiling. Edgar's ceiling is higher. Pretty clear-cut win for me for the answer by unanimous decision. Now, moving on to the UFC 205 pay-per-view main card. We're halfway there to the highly anticipated main event and the rest of the title fights on this card. We got former women's bantamweight champion lost the title in July to Amanda Nunes in the main event of UFC 200. How crazy is that? Main event of 200 now opening up 205. Miesha Tate, Cupcake, taking on Raquel Rocky Pennington. Wes, I'll start with you. Are you going with the former champion or the fairly big underdog here in Raquel Pennington?
people in this fight are actually counting Pennington out, I think this is definitely a closer fight than what it looks like by the numbers. Taking a look at Miesha Tate, we know that in her last fight, another fight that happened at UFC 200, she fought Amanda Nunes. That was when she was the champion, but she ended up just getting outstruck. Hurt her plenty of times with punches. Tate started to get desperate here and there, started to back up. She wasn't having any success, and Nunes was able to capitalize on that fight. Nunes and Pennington, Nunes is a much better fighter, especially in that first round. Pennington, on the other hand, just taking a quick look at her fights when she fought Holly Holm back a while ago, that was pretty close. I actually scored it for Pennington. Rewatching it, it was a little bit closer than I thought. Kind of a toss-up fight. However, when you take a look at Pennington's 3-fight win streak, which he rides right now, including Jessica Andrade, which was a very impressive performance. I think she was I thought she lost that first round. This was back in September of 2015. She was able to get a second-round submission. I think it was a rear naked choke. Then she fought Betch Kahea. This was back in April. Very close fight in that, too. I think a lot of people thought Betch won. Not really sure. I think I actually missed that fight when it happened, and I don't think I ever had a chance to really watch it. So not really worried about that fight. We take a look also at her most recent fight, which happened back at UFC 202, McGregor versus Diaz, and that's where she beat up Elizabeth Phillips. Now, Elizabeth Phillips has never really been at the top of the division. She's just kind of there. I feel bad saying that, but that's just the way it is. And I think in comparison between the two, definitely a better fighter. She utilizes her wrestling very, very well. I think that's going to be key in this fight. I don't know. If she can't land the punches, then I think that this is going to be Raquel's fight. I just think Tate's a better fighter. I have to go with Tate in this fight. I have her picked on UFC Pick'em by unanimous decision, but it's a very close fight. I wouldn't really be surprised if Pennington could possibly pull out some kind of submission like she's done in the past. She has some pretty crazy ones, so we'll have to see what happens, but I think Tate's going to be able to grind out decision in this fight.
And Paolo, are you going to agree? Are you going with the cupcake in this one, or do you think Raquel Pennington can pull off the upset?
No, I think this is Tate's fight to lose, as they say again. She's just a better fighter overall, man. I think her striking's on par with Pennington, if it's not better, because it's been getting better. She's the better wrestler, obviously, and she's versed enough in jiu-jitsu, and she's really tough to submit. You know, you like Ronda Rousey had to snap her arm off to submit her. So Raquel Pennington's gonna basically have to choke her unconscious or break one of her body parts. Now the thing is, she lost to Nunes. She tapped out to that choke because she had a broken nose, and she already had a broken nose on top of being choked out like that. Then yeah, you know, I don't care how tough you are, you're probably going to be tapping out when that happens. Plus, she was already hurt. She probably already had a concussion at that time. Yeah, this is Tate's fight to lose. I just find it hard for Pennington to win this unless Tate shows up lackadaisical, not really as hungry as much because she lost the belt. She already won the belt. Maybe she's not as hungry anymore. So, you know, if that happens, then I can see Pennington pulling off an upset. But if it's the same old Miesha Tate, she's going to win this fight.
We are experiencing some music from, I believe, Wes's end. Or maybe Paulo's. I don't know. Maybe Paulo's just ran away from the camera to get a phone call. We'll see. Miesha Tate, anyways. Miesha Tate, Raquel Pennington. This is actually kind of an interesting one. I don't expect a whole lot actually off of paper. I'm kind of not expecting a firefight or that exciting of a fight. Miesha Tate should, but the reason I say should is that she did not look good against men. Well, we know she looked terrible in the actual fight, but she looked mentally sort of drained even before the fight started, even before she got blasted in the face and choked out by Nunes, the new UFC Women's Bantamweight champion. So I'm kind of curious to see, mentally speaking, how Miesha Tate looks leading up to this fight in the cage, walking out at weigh-ins, things like that. The weight cut, again, not a good weight cut for her at 200. Maybe these stakes were just so high. Title fight, main event of the biggest fight ever, or biggest card ever. Maybe that got to her. Maybe that is why she was mentally drained. Maybe something's going on in her personal life we don't know about. So I'm a little cautious going all in Miesha Tate, although I will pick her in this fight. Raquel Pennington, of course, her strong suit is her striking, and arguably she could pick apart Miesha Tate if she keeps it standing. However, Miesha Tate, very good wrestler, and she can sink in some her fair share of submissions as well. This will look like some of her recent performances. Jessica, just kind of laying on top of her opponent for 3 rounds, not doing a whole lot, not necessarily improving her position tons and tons, but just staying on top enough, being active enough to rebound successfully and score a unanimous decision victory. As I said, it won't be anything special, but Miesha Tate will get back into the winning column on Saturday night, in my opinion. Now, next up, we got a really, really fun welterweight matchup. We got number 5, Kelvin Gastelum, taking on number 6, Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Cerrone's been on a roll since moving up to welterweight. 3 wins in a row after losing the lightweight title fight against Rafael dos Anjos in December. Beat Alex Oliveira, Cowboy, another Cowboy. Beat Patrick Cote, and recently Rick Story. Gastelum recently defeated former champion Johnny Hendricks, biggest win of his career. And that was coming off a couple losses. He's been wins and losses past a little while. Lost to New Magny, beat Marquardt, lost to Woodley, etc., etc. Paolo, I'll start with you. Donald Cowboy Cerrone or Kelvin Gastelum?
Yeah, as you mentioned with Gastelum there, that might end up being his career at the moment, because I think he's going to lose this fight to Donald Cerrone. So he's in the spot here. He delivered against Johnny Hendricks, a shell of himself, Johnny Hendricks, I should say. A guy who can't weight cut anymore, Johnny Hendricks. And now he's against Donald Cerrone. If you watch that Rick Story fight, Gastelum and Rick Story fought tooth and nail. That was a very close fight. I think that went to a split decision and could have gone either way. But, he outlasted Story. He's a lot better than what he used to be. But at the end of the day, he's still going to be meat and potatoes kind of striker with wrestling and jiu-jitsu background that Cowboys, seen a lot already. I think Cowboys going to tool him on his feet like he did with Rick Story here. I think it's going to be another one of those fights where it might be close in the first few rounds, feeling out process. Cowboy starts a bit slow, and then once he figures out Gastelum, he's going to, break down something for him, and he's going to get finished, or he's going to beat him by decision. Or if Gastelum takes him down, Cowboy's going to be ready, and he could sub him. So Cowboy by finish at some point, but maybe around 3.
And Paulo, are you going with Wes, are you going with the Cowboy, Donald Cerrone, or Kelvin Gastelum?
Man, this is a really close fight. But Cerrone has looked absolutely fantastic, especially dropping down to this weight class. Kelvin Gastelum, we take a look at him real quick. Johnny Hendricks, I think that was the biggest win and one of the most important wins of his career. If he would have lost that fight, he would have been 3-4 in his last fights for losses, that is. Now, I've really been impressed with Kelvin Gastelum's game with striking. He was able to land a lot of good punches when he fought Johnny Hendricks up on the feet. In the 3rd round against let's see, 1, 2, 3. Was it the 3rd round or the 4th round where?
You guys remember? I want to say the 4th. I think Gastelum won the 4th and the 5th. I can't recall.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people were thinking that 4th round was a 10-8 because he knocked him down twice in that round.
That's right. But I actually saw it 10-9. Yes.
Yeah, and I had it. I actually had it for Magny. I thought he won that fight, but I think that was a big turning point in Kelvin Gastelum's career, because we take a look back a little bit further when he fought Tyron Woodley, who happens to be the champion, also fighting on this card. He was able to hang in there. He was able to land some decent punches of his own, especially when Woodley started to slow down in the later rounds, and we'll get to that a little bit later. Just talking about this fight, I think Cerrone at this weight class is just a little bit too much for Kelvin. And I know Kelvin, like I did mention, he is really good with the striking. It's improved a lot. And he is a good wrestler, but I think if he's not able to take Cerrone down, I think this is going to be Cerrone's fight to win. And I wouldn't be surprised if Cerrone's going to be able to knock him out. I actually do have in my picks Cerrone to get a 2nd round TKO in this fight. I didn't want to pick a TKO because I know Kelvin has never been finished. But then I said the same thing against Rick Story, and guess what? Cerrone knocked him out. And then guess what? I also said the same thing when he fought Patrick Cote, and guess what? He knocks out Patrick Cote. So there's 2 fights in a row where he's absolutely shocked me with his performances on the feet. So I'm giving in. I'm going to pick Cerrone in this fight, getting a TKO in the second round over Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that because I'm in the same boat as you, Wes, where I picked Cerrone to finish Cote back in June in UFC Ottawa, but I had him by submission. I felt that since Cote had never been truly knocked out, I believe there was that doctor's office. There was the one where it's like TKO on paper, but not really. So this was basically the first time he'd been really finished by TKO, and he proved me wrong. And then once again against Rick Story, I picked Cerrone by decision, figuring Cerrone inside the distance. Cerrone's going to take me, prove me wrong again. So this time around, I kind of Kelvin Gastelum and Rick Story. Gastelum's by far the better fighter, especially nowadays. They fought back in 2014 UFC 171, I believe. I believe, even though he moved up from lightweight, Gastelum's always been at welterweight. Even had, was at middleweight actually, and has had troubles making welterweight in the past. Cerrone has the reach advantage, has the height advantage. The only sort of physical advantage Gastelum has may be his strength. He may be physically a bit stronger. He might be thicker. Although looking at their new pictures, photos on UFC.com, Gastelum doesn't look fantastic. I don't know if it's the lighting, just this one picture. We'll have to wait till the weigh-ins, but he doesn't look fantastic physically in this photo leading up to this fight. So that's a bit, I don't know. I can't really read into a UFC.com picture, but just something. Maybe look at the Gastelum with the weigh-ins. Maybe he'll have a tough cut. Who knows at this point? Cerrone, though, he'll be in shape, and Cerrone going to be the better striker. Gastelum is good everywhere. He's good on the feet and good on the ground. Very good wrestler as well. He does everything good. He doesn't do it fancy, and that's what I like about Gastelum. He's gritty and he's good. And this guy, I was once super on Gastelum, saying this guy's future champion for sure. Now I'm not so confident. The loss to Woodley and Neil Magny kind of pulling me away from Gastelum a little bit. I still do see the bright future for him, and he's still young, but now is not going to be his time. I think Donald Cerrone will once again shock his doubters and pick up a knockout win over Kelvin Gastelum. Gastelum, super tough guy and never been knocked out, never really been hurt. Survived against Woodley, almost beat him. He seems to have a good chin, but Cerrone, he finds a way, it seems, every time, other than against champions or number 1, number 2 guys. I think he's going to win this fight. I think he's going to do so impressively and win by knockout. Now, we got one of the best fights. This is by far the best, in my opinion, the best non-title fight, arguably even better than 1 or 2 of the title fights coming up. Chris Weidman versus Yoel Romero, former champion, former middleweight champion, taking on the Soldier of God, Paolo. Are you going with Yoel Romero, the underdog here, or do you think the All-American can get back into the winning column?
I'm going to go with Chris Weidman here, but this is one of those picks where I'm really flip-flopping on because both guys sometimes feel very similar to me. Yoel Romero, I mean, great athlete, man. One of the best athletes out there. I mean, how old is this guy? This guy's like almost Hendo old, isn't he? He's like, what, 39 or something like that? And I mean, he looks better than guys half his age or something like that. But his chin has been tested before. With Weidman, it really hasn't been. At least I haven't seen it in his fights, or maybe he's just has a better chin. But in Romero, as we remember, he got knocked out in that Tim Kennedy fight. Controversially, I should say, because Tim Kennedy illegally grabbed his glove and just beat the tar out of him. But apparently he was saying no mas, meaning no more. He quit because he got the crap beat out of him. So if it does end up being a dogfight, which it could be in the second and third round, I'm going to give the edge to Weidman. I think he's the mentally tougher fighter here, but if Yoel Romero completely schools him in the wrestling department, don't color me surprised. But I think Weidman will win at least 2 out of 3 rounds, and having the crowd basically cheering him on and stuff like that might just sway the judges in his favor if it's a close fight.
And Wes, are you going to agree with Paolo here? Are you going to pick the former middleweight champion Chris Weidman to rebound successfully in New York City, or will Yoel Romero, the Cuban fighter, pick up what could be the biggest win of his career?
There's a lot of things I can talk about in this fight just because I feel like it's such an evenly matched contest. Man, I've gone back and forth on this one multiple times. But all in all, I'm going to tell you my pick now, but I'm going to break it down a little bit just because we're doing the show, of course. I have Chris Weidman in this fight. I have him by a third-round TKO, and I'll kind of explain why. Weidman is a fantastic wrestler, but so is Yoel Romero. And Yoel Romero exceeds expectations when he is competing in the first round. I know a lot of his wins have come in the latter rounds of fights. I think he has possibly tied. The last time I saw a statistic on this, I think he's tied for first third-round finishes in the UFC history, which is just a crazy statistic to have, especially for a guy, and this is where I'm going to get at, that struggles with cardio. We see Yoel Romero in a lot of his fights slow down in the later rounds, but in the beginning of his fights, he tends to have the most success, and that's because he's able to he has a great left hand that he's able to land and throw in. He used that very well against Lyoto Machida. Landed some good shots against Tim Kennedy early on in that fight, and occasionally throughout that fight, and all the controversy that happened. But there are a few things that worry about me when we look at Yoel Romero. Thinking back when he fought Derek Brunson, Derek Brunson gave him a run for his money, but then again, Brunson's at the top of the division too. However, you had a little Hani Marks in there who's able to take him down, a freaking gold medal or whatever medal. I think he won a silver? I think it was a silver medal in the freestyle Olympics. Yeah. So a guy named Hani Marks, I know this is mixed martial arts, but still, I don't know what Hani Marks is up to these days. I think he might be
World Series, I think.
Yeah, World Series.
Is he even still with World Series?
Who knows by now? I know Clifford Starks is, who happened to be knocked out by Yoel Romero.
Yeah, I actually think I'm getting mixed up with him and Clifford. But
Hani's somewhere. Don't know what he's up to. But he did knock out Clifford Starks with that flying knee in his UFC debut. All in all, I'm definitely leaning Chris Weidman in this fight. I think that it's going to be very close in the first round. But I think that Chris's chin is going to be able to hold up that rock-hold finish. Kind of started from Weidman doing some kind of spinning kick, and Rockhold was able to get him down. And from that point on, he was able to use a lot of ground and pound. Also, you have to think that Chris Weidman, he's in New York. This is his home state, and he has so many fans that are going to be there supporting him in this contest. This is, besides getting the fights with Anderson Silva, probably the biggest fight that he's ever had mentally, because he's coming off that loss to Luke Rockhold and losing the belt. And that's the first time he's ever lost a fight and also losing anything that he's ever been able to grab, and that was the title. I think that he has got a lot of momentum and a lot of positivity coming into this fight. I think he's extremely motivated. And I think Yoel is able to find success early but slows down, that Chris is going to be able to take over the fight. And even if he doesn't, and it's kind of evenly contested throughout the first and second round, I think Chris is going to be able to take over, especially in the third round. And I actually have, for my prediction, Chris Weidman. I don't know what I said at the beginning, but on Pick'em I had to check a third-round TKO win for Weidman.
That is what you said at the beginning, just FYI there. I am going to this is a tough one to call. Chris Weidman coming off the loss to Luke Rockhold at UFC 194 in December. Where is his head at? I suspect pretty positive. Debuting in New York finally after years and years of going to events in New York, going to press conferences, trying to rally, trying to get it legalized, get the sport of MMA, of course, legalized in the state of New York. Mission accomplished for all the New York fighters, including Chris Weidman. He was kind of at the top, so I imagine he's in pretty high spirits despite coming off the loss and having to look for a rebound fight against Yoel Romero. So I expect him to come in the best he's ever looked. On the other hand, Yoel Romero, coming off the USADA ordeal, both guys have a lot to prove. One guy coming off a devastating loss, the other guy coming off a somewhat controversial USADA fiasco, where he wasn't at fault, but it was tainted supplements, so he got a 6-month suspension, yada, yada, yada. You guys get the story, of course. I'm sure you're quite familiar with the situation. Stylistically, both guys are wrestlers. Both guys are good on the feet. Weidman has actually the advantages in both the reach and the height department. Reach, especially 5 inches for Weidman, that's actually pretty big. I didn't realize that when initially thinking about this one. Yoel Romero, thicker. He's an insane athlete for his age, and even just for a UFC fighter in general. Forget his age of 30, 39, whatever. This guy is unhuman-like, just like Oluwayo Bambo said it when referring to Lyman Good, the day of Lyman Good's failed suspension. Chris Weidman, this guy, this is a tough one. Going to knows that Yoel Romero's biggest weakness is his cardio, and I absolutely agree. However, I do think he's harder. Some people expect Romero to be huffing and puffing in the second round, but he won't be. He can go 3 rounds. If this was a 5-rounder, I would consider picking Weidman in this fight, but this is not a 5-rounder. With Yoel Romero, the maximum he will go is 15 minutes. Yoel Romero is a beast. He finishes a lot of the best. Lito Machida was one of his biggest wins. Jacare didn't get the finish, but still got that nod. I think he's going to take down Chris Weidman, who, of course, has great wrestling credentials, good on the feet as well. I think Yoel Romero is going to beast mode Chris Weidman, if you will. This will be close for a while at last, but once Romero gets on top of Weidman, that's all over in my opinion. Despite Weidman having a solid ground game, good wrestling game, or a great wrestling game, I think Romero's going to get on top of him, start pounding him out, and get the finish midway through the fight. I'm looking forward to this one. Arguably,
one more.
Yes.
I'll say one more thing too, real quick. I'd like to point out another reason that I'm kind of leaning towards Chris Weidman in this fight. Just out of looking from everybody that's on the card, he is your only New York fighter still competing on the card, because we did lose Lyman Good, but another big hit on the card was Rashad Evans, of course. Yes. And now that those 2 fights are off, Weidman's the only guy left from New York, and this is in his state. So I think that's one reason why I'm leaning that way. And I thought I meant to point that out earlier, but I thought I'd add it in real quick.
Isn't Caitlin Chukagian from? Oh no, she's not. She's from Pennsylvania.
Oh,
close, but most of the time. Yeah, me neither.
Oh, actually, no, New Jersey. Rafael Natal fights in New York, but yeah, he's Brazilian.
Yeah,
so
a lot of these guys train
true.
in New York. You got Wonder also training with Weidman here now again with Weidman, but again, Weidman is the only native of New York still on this card. Another thing Paolo mentioned in the Hangers chat right now, Yoel Romero, everybody craps on his gas tank, but he has the most 3-round finishes out of a lot of people. I don't know if he has the record. Maybe he does, but he has a lot. Round 3 finishes. What did I say? Something else? I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, 3 round finishes.
Yeah, 3rd round finishes. Yoel Romero. That's something he's good at, despite his cardio. That might not be up to. Anyways, moving on. Our first true title. One of them would have been, and then of course got the John Jones thing that happened. Card with 3 title fights, I believe. Anyone know?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
You were cutting out, dude.
Oh yeah,
Web's over there is protesting Trump. What's it doing? Internet it's like
yeah, MTS is shutting down. We're in Canada. We're fairly safe. We're in a different country, but
Donald Trump is watching and shutting down our feed because we're not praising him enough.
Scared. MTS is running scared. Our internet is crashing, but hopefully, you guys, I don't know. Hopefully, you guys can sort of understand what I'm saying. Maybe I'm going robot on you. Hopefully not. My question was, do you guys know if this is the first UFC card with 3 true title fights? Of course, 200 in July was supposed to have 3.
No, it's not. It's I think UFC 33 had it. That's the one that Dana said was one of the all-time worst UFC cards because it was so they hyped it up so much. They had 3 title fights on there, and I think every fight went to decision. That was around the early.
I was gonna say I pulled it up real quick. They had 2 finishes on the card, and one of the fights, Jitaro Nakao, I have no idea who that was, and the other was Ricardo Almeida. Then he had three decisions. I only see 2 title fights. No, I'm incorrect. One was
title fights. One was for the inaugural middleweight title. Mm-hmm. So it was like 3 title fights, yeah.
Dave Mene. So
Dave Mene, the first middleweight champion, if I'm not mistaken.
Middleweight champion, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was a long time ago.
I tried to look smart, but I think
Nick wasn't even born yet. Oh, yo! I think we finally found this. Nick, were you born 2002, 2001?
I was born 2000.
What?
Oh, okay. So you're 1 year old. 1 year old. You were 1 year old when that happened. So yeah, it's been a while.
What month?
Title fights.
It was September.
Okay, so I was born in July. So I was just over a year old. There you go. Yeah. Maybe I get a pass on that one because why should I know that card has 3 title fights, right? Maybe I watched from my crib, but probably not.
We're live for when it happened.
Well, according to Dana, you're not missing much, so let's just move on from that.
Okay, so I tried to look smart. I did not necessarily succeed. But moving on, our first of 3 title fights. The strawweight championship is on the line. Joanna Jędrzejczyk taking on Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Pole versus pole. I love this fight. Joanna champion. Karolina, double J, double K. Mike Goldberg to announce this fight. This is going to be amazing pronunciation-wise. Will Joanna Jędrzejczyk retain her women's strawweight title, or will KK gain? Paolo, what do you think?
Yo, you know what? I really want to hop on the KK bandwagon here, but I don't know. I don't think she's just going to win because this is one of those fights where she's like fighting a fighter who's like her superior. I mean, because come on. Is KK going to knock out Jędrzejczyk? Come on, guys. Just tell me right now. Do you think KK is going to knock out Jędrzejczyk? No?
I like that, Nick. I don't see it.
Nope, no. I don't think Nick is saying no as he's chewing on something there. Yeah. No. I mean, KK to win by like knockout is like plus what? Plus 1,500 or something. It better be because if she knocks out Jędrzejczyk, that would be really shocking in my opinion. Yeah. It'll probably be the most shocking knockout, even more than Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey, because especially at the weight class they're in 115, you really don't see a lot of one-hitter quitters at the 115 division. If she hurts Jędrzejczyk, she's going to have to pile up on her and not give her a chance to recover, and I don't see that happening. I think Jędrzejczyk is far more better technically as a kickboxer. She's had more big fight experiences. She's faster, which is even more important because you can beat the other fighter even if you're both technically equivalent, which is not. So I think this is probably one of the bigger locks in this card, if not the biggest lock in this card. I think Jędrzejczyk's going to give KK an ass whooping. Maybe in the first 2 rounds she lets KK settle in a bit so she can have a bit of a fight, maybe because she's getting bored in the division because she's kicking everyone's asses. So maybe first 2 rounds KK wins one of the rounds and then she just piles it on her and whoops her ass in the last 3 rounds.
Maybe she gets knocked out on purpose because she's bored and she's tired of defending it. Probably not. Wes, what do you think? Are you going with double J to retain or double K to gain?
That's funny. Just taking a look at this fight, man, I don't see how there's any way Karolina is going to win this fight. She is undefeated, and she is 10-0, and she does have some decent wins over Rose Namajunas in her last fight, which was a pretty close fight. Shouldn't have been a split decision. I thought it was pretty unanimous, but then again, I haven't seen it since that card happened. And then the fight before, She fought Heather Jo Clark, who just got beat up by Alexa Grasso. And before that, she made her UFC debut, which was against Rana Marcos. I mean, she's a decent fighter, and she does find some success on the feet. But she's not the same level as Joanna is. Joanna has so many credentials, especially with her Muay Thai. She does so much damage in her fights. She's able to take over the fights as they go into the fights. It seems like the only times that Joanna struggles are usually the earlier round. We saw that in her last fight against Claudia. The first 2 rounds were pretty, I thought, unanimous for Claudia. And also the fight that she had back with Valerie Letourneau, that the only round that was close in that fight was that first round. And I saw some people scoring it vice versa. It could have gone either way. But besides that, Joanna, she has so much skill, especially when it comes to being on the feet. And she is able to take it on, especially in the championship rounds. I don't see how Carolina has a chance in this one. I feel bad saying it, but then again, it's what's going to happen. I think Joanna, she's going to beat up Carolina for starting probably, like you mentioned, after the first round, probably starting in that second round. She's going to take over the fight, and we're going to see her get a finish in this fight. And also, just a reminder, I think back in Joanna's amateur days, and along with Carolina's, Joanna actually submitted Karolina Kowalkiewicz. How is that even possible? We never see Joanna submit anybody. She's always on the feet. So the fact that happened makes me think, oh, well, if she can submit somebody and she does nothing on the ground at all in her UFC time, she's definitely going to be able to whip her on the feet. So I definitely have Joanna in this fight. 4th round TKO win for one of the 2 Polish fighters.
Yeah, if there's one way to beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk, that is by taking her down, either grinding out a win or by beating her on the ground by submission, pounding her out, whatever the case is. Although she has fantastic takedown defense for the strawweight division, and we don't see that happen a whole lot. Claudia Gadelha tried it, wasn't 100% successful, and of course, Joanna ended up retaining the title. This is a striker for a striker matchup, nothing more, nothing less, and Joanna Jędrzejczyk is clearly the better striker. She has more tools on the feet. She's quicker. She's more powerful. She has a larger output. She's a bit more accurate. The landed per minute are close, although Joanna is a bit higher at 6.36 strikes per minute, and Carolina's at 5.98. I'm actually a little surprised at Carolina's number. Thought that'd be a little bit lower. I thought the difference would be a bit larger. Joanna, though, again, a great fight. I'm not going to spend a whole lot on it just because I feel like this is a pretty clear matchup to call. Joanna is the better striker, and there's no way in hell this fight is going to the ground. Maybe because this sport is MMA and anything can happen, it's a repeat of last fight and we see a submission, but probably not. We've never seen Joanna on the ground, basically in the UFC. Carolina, same goes to her. It's striker versus striker. One's a better striker, and that's who's going to win. As I said, this is MMA. There are one-punch knockouts that occur in the UFC. So could Carolina get inside somehow and land on Joanna and put her out cold? Yeah, it's possible. Not going to happen. We don't see one-punch knockouts, as you guys mentioned, fairly often in the UFC women's division, and specifically the strawweight division. They're just not. They just don't have enough power. Simple as that. So we're not going to see a one-punch knockout in this fight. I'd be surprised if we do. I'd be surprised if Carolina wins. I think it'll be close but clear. I don't see Joanna dominating Carolina because Carolina is very, very good on the feet. Joanna's just a bit better, one step ahead, if you will. I don't think this will be a dominant win for Joanna, but I think it'll be clear. Joanna Jędrzejczyk will win, maybe even each round, clearly. Carolina could win one round, but probably not much more than that. Joanna Jędrzejczyk will win this fight. I don't see a finish happening. I think it'll be close, and I think it'll go to the judges, who will score the fight in favor of the champion, and still Joanna Jędrzejczyk. All right, moving on. We got the co-main event of the evening. In this fight, the welterweight title is on the line. New champion Tyrone, the Chosen One Woodley, takes on Number 2, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. This is a very, very, very fun stylistic matchup. Wes, I will start with you. Will Tyron Woodley retain his welterweight belt for the first time, or is it time for Wonderboy to gain?
Man, this is going to be a very, very close fight. Two fighters that definitely deserve to be at this position in their careers. And it's really cool to see this fight happening just because of how impressive they are stylistically. I'll talk about Stephen Thompson first. We already know what his style is, and that is definitely going to be fighting in his karate stance that he's always used pretty much throughout his entire career. And that's one thing that he used really effectively when he fought Rory McDonald back in June. And that's how he was able to pretty much win every single round. However, no, I'll get to that in a second. I'll talk a little bit more positive about Steven before I get to the negative. There's not too many negatives, though. He's a fantastic fighter. That Ellenberger knockout was one of my favorites of the year, getting that spinning heel hook. Then he also has that first-round TK over Johnny Hendricks. Awesome, awesome performance. I think that was definitely the biggest turning point in his career, especially propelling him to get that fight with Rory and then getting this fight with Woodley. Now, just to talk about Steven a little bit, one thing that I noticed, I did watch some footage on these guys. This is actually one fight I can talk a little bit about and be somewhat smart. So just talking about Thompson, he loves to look for counters in fights, especially being from this karate background. He's in southpaw. He's going to fight in southpaw. And Woodley is orthodox. I've noticed in Thompson's fights, he tends to keep his hands a little bit lower. He doesn't keep them up all the way towards his face. He keeps them just a little bit tucked towards his chest. And that's good and all. However, when he fought Jake Ellenberger back in their fight, he was able to get the first-round TKO with that spinning heel kick. I think he landed it twice. But we can't forget that Ellenberger did at one point early in the fight drop him with a pretty simple right hook that wasn't too strong, but it was strong enough to actually drop Thompson. And that was a big moment in that fight that Thompson was able to come back and find some success. But since he keeps his hands low, especially fighting in this stance, it keeps the chin open for the target. And I felt like that's how Jake Ellenberger was able to capitalize. Jake Ellenberger also fights in orthodox. And Woodley's the exact same way. And I think Woodley has a lot more power, and especially coming into this first round, especially having the belt and having this momentum from especially this position that he's in, he could capitalize. If he is able to corner Thompson, because Thompson does back up a lot in this fight and usually has his back against the cage like he did against Rory, even though he did find success in that fight, then I think Woodley's going to be a dangerous threat. I think that he has a good chance in that first round to possibly clip him, with that right hand and send Wonderboy down to the canvas. So we could see that first round knockout by Tyron Woodley in this fight. However, if that doesn't happen, Woodley might he's known for his wrestling too. If it's not punches, it's wrestling. He's gonna start going for the takedowns, and I bet you Steven has worked really hard for this in this training camp to prepare for the wrestling that Tyron Woodley has. If that fight gets out of that first or second round, and we haven't seen Woodley do anything besides use his punches and stay on the feet and doesn't get those takedowns, Thompson's going to take over this fight. I can guarantee you that, because Woodley has always struggled with cardio. And if Thompson's able to take over that fight and last throughout the first 2 rounds, I think that it's going to be his fight to win and that he's going to be able to take the fight over. I think there are 2 possible predictions here. I think the first is Woodley getting a first-round TKO win or just a knockout win with that right hand. I think the second option is Thompson getting a 4th or 5th round, maybe even a 3rd round TKO win with maybe a kick or just some punches from Woodley being fatigued. I went out on the limb for this fight. I'm going with the champion. I have to say going out on the limb because a lot of people are counting out. I don't know why so many people hate him, but he's a pretty nice guy. Actually, I do know why people hate him. I take that back. But I'm going with Woodley in this fight. I do have him getting the first round TKO, but I'm not counting Wonderboy out in this fight at all. It's just I think it's a toss-up fight and very dependent upon that first round.
Yes, that is very true. The first round, like in many fights, but this one particularly will sort of determine what happens. The first round is crucial when it comes to guys like Tyron Woodley and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Before I give my pick and break it down, Paolo, go ahead. Are you going with Tyron Woodley, the champion, to retain his title, or do you think Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, after wins over Hendricks, the win over Rory McDonald, he's been begging and begging for the title shot, didn't know he was going to get it, GSP, Damian Maia there in the mix, he got it. Is this his time to shine?
It could be. This fight could, like Wes said, could look something like the Johnny Hendricks fight where, Tyron Woodley, a similarly small fighter, wrestle boxer. He's got the knockout power in his hands. He's got the wrestling base. And, Thompson could style on him, man. He's just so much more of an advanced striker. But the reason why I'm picking Woodley here is because of the hand speed, man. Woodley's just really freaking fast. And you know what they say? It's not the fights. I mean, it's not the fights. It's not the hits that are the hardest that get you. It's the ones you don't see coming. And you saw that with the Robbie Lawler fight. I mean, he was just so quick on an overhand. Like, Lawler didn't see it coming, and boom, and just got wiped out cold. Same with the Josh Koscheck fight. Koscheck even tweeted him saying, yeah, you're really fast, dude. And then with the Ellenberger and the Thompson fight, actually, Thompson said that he wasn't hurt by the punch at all. It was just like one of those things where his legs gave up. And his legs gave up because his brain temporarily shut off because he didn't see that punch coming. So he was just like, well, it got knocked out, So that could kind of happen here. Thompson could be winning the fight, dominating the fight. Maybe he makes the mistake, gets backed up into the cage for just a brief second. Woodley throws like a wild haymaker in there and just clips him and catches him. And that's all Woodley needs. One punch is all Woodley needs to put you out. So I think by the third round or second round or something like that, where Thompson is pretty much kicking his butt and stuff like that, and Woodley's just barely surviving, Woodley's going to land something and puts out Thompson to retain the title.
Very interesting. I kind of expected at least one of you guys to go with the challenger, who's actually favored, according to the betting odds right now. He's a slight favorite with Woodley being a slight underdog. You don't see that too often, the champion being the underdog in his title fights, but that is the case here. And this is a close fight. Tyron Woodley is arguably the most dangerous welterweight in the UFC in the first round. After the first 5 minutes, maybe the 10 minutes if he's lucky, he's far from the most dangerous. Although he does have the knockout power throughout 25 minutes, that doesn't go away. His speed will diminish a little bit. He'll get slower as the fight goes on. He'll be fatigued. If it goes past the first couple rounds, he'll be less active. He's already not that active of a fighter. Wonderboy, way higher output. Wonderboy, this guy is so creative on the feet. His stance is a stance no one has been able to crack except for Matt Brown. But that was back a few years ago when Wonderboy was just not who Wonderboy is today. Wonderboy is a completely different fighter, a completely different animal, and he's a better fighter. That's key. Tyron Woodley, how much has he changed in the past few years? I don't know. He's a power puncher. He caught Robbie Lawler. Would the fight have been different if it went past the first round? If he didn't land that shot, it very well could have been. I don't know for sure. We'll never know. Tyron Woodley can knock out Wonderboy. You brought up Wes by Ellenberger. I actually never thought about that before now, really, and that's a good point. Wonderboy seems to have an okay chin. He recovered well and then ended up getting the brilliant knockout win in that fight, but he did get knocked down, and that was against a 2015 Jake Ellenberger. If a 2016 Tyron Woodley knocks down Wonderboy, it could be game over. Whoa. Woodley would pounce on him, pound him out, and probably retain his title rather quickly and rather easily. Wonderboy is getting better. He's working with some of the best in the world. His takedown defense is going to be key in this fight as well. Tyron Woodley, if he can't catch Wonderboy on the feet, he has a solid plan B, and that is takedowns. He has the wrestling credentials. Wonderboy does not, compared to Woodley, does not. Woodley can take down and grind over Wonderboy. If he was smart, he'd probably do that right off the opening bell. Yes, he has knockout power, and yes, that's what he's known for. But Wonderboy, to me, has the better advantage, or has the advantage on the feet. More a higher chance of winning on the feet. His style is too crafty, kind of like Dominic Cruz. He's different than Cruz, but he's the same in the sense that no one can seem to crack it as of late. Too unorthodox, too bizarre. Kind of like Tony Ferguson in a way, but even more so like Cruz. If Woodley goes for the takedowns, I don't think he'll be able to get them. If he does, I think Wonderboy will pop right up. If he can hold down Wonderboy, props to him. That's great. He'll probably grind out Wonderboy. But Wonderboy is working with Chris Weidman, wrestling coaches as well. He's got he knows what he's doing when it comes to the wrestling department. He's not a fantastic wrestler himself, but I think he'll have the defense here to defend the takedowns. It'll be a stand-up fight for me, in my opinion, which is where I give the advantage to Wonderboy. Tyron Woodley is always dangerous, but if he doesn't catch Wonderboy, I think this is Wonderboy's fight to win or fight to lose, whatever you want to say. I think Wonderboy is going to win this fight, and new for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Give me Stephen Wonderboy Thompson by unanimous decision. Woodley will fatigue. He'll slow down. He'll gas out. And he'll never really get going. He'll never land anything significant throughout the 25 minutes. Wonderboy will be moving. Woodley is super quick. We saw that against Lawler, but Wonderboy will be able to get out of the way in time. Woodley will be throwing punches. Wonderboy will not be there. That's how I see this fight playing out. Wonderboy backing up, but doing so strategically en route to a unanimous decision win. And new Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. All right, we got the main event of the evening. It's a super fight, the first one in a long time. George St. Pierre, BJ Penn, you got to go back a long time for the last champion versus champion. Not, of course, including interim champions. We got lightweight champion Eddie Alvarez taking on featherweight champion Conor the Notorious McGregor. How good does that sound? Lightweight champion versus featherweight champion Eddie Alvarez, Conor McGregor. The 155-pound belt is on the line. Chance to make history by becoming the first two-time UFC champion, two-time division, simultaneously holding the belts at the same time. Will he make history? Will the Irish superstar make history in the biggest event, in the main event of the biggest event? Wes, you go first. Conor McGregor, Eddie Alvarez. How do you see this one playing out?
Oh boy, man, it's hard to start on this fight, especially for me, just because this is such a fantastic fight. We have Conor McGregor back in action, fighting here at UFC 205 in New York. He's going to have a lot of fans there, but so is Eddie Alvarez. He's just right there down in Philly. And he's going to have some fans there himself. And now we're going to see how the featherweight champion does competing here at lightweight and trying to get the belt to become a two-division champion. And I know a lot of people give Conor some slack, or not some slack, but some hate just because he hasn't defended that belt. But about that, I'm going to talk about just this fight more specifically. Just taking a look at some of the numbers, I see a big statistic here is that Conor McGregor is going to have the reach. He has a 5-inch reach advantage over Eddie Alvarez in this fight. And one thing that Conor does very, very well is timing his shots and being able to utilize his range to be able to clip fighters and put them in uncomfortable situations. Now, just kind of talking about this as well, I believe Eddie Alvarez fights orthodox. Am I correct or am I wrong?
Say that again.
Do you guys know if Eddie Alvarez fights southpaw or orthodox? I'm pretty sure he's orthodox. I don't think I've ever seen him fight southpaw. I
believe you're correct.
Okay, then he has to be. In comparison, Conor McGregor, he does fight in the southpaw position, but sometimes he does switch up his stance, and he switches up pretty well in his fights. I know when it comes to striking, Eddie Alvarez is a good striker, but that I felt like was more in his Bellator days. And I'm not saying that the Bellator fighters aren't toe-and-toe with these UFC fighters, but RDA, Anthony Pettis, and Gilbert Melendez, and also Cowboy Cerrone. Those right there are 4 of the best fighters that the UFC has in the lightweight division. Now Cerrone's in welterweight, of course, but when Cerrone did compete in that division. Eddie is a good striker, but in his UFC fights, he has utilized his wrestling. We saw that against Gilbert Melendez. When he fought Gilbert Melendez, he got rocked, I think, in the first round, or maybe not rocked, but he did get clipped a few times. Eddie started using his wrestling in that second and the third round, and that's what won him the fight. Eddie is a fantastic wrestler. And we moved on. This is not counting the Cerrone fight because he did lose that. But when he started to win, he fought Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis outstruck Eddie Alvarez on the feet. However, Eddie Alvarez landed 6 takedowns in that fight, and he won a split decision. So it shows you right there, again, another important fight where Eddie's utilizing his wrestling to limit that of these strikers. We move on to the next fight. Eddie Alvarez fights RDA. Now, this was for the lightweight belt. And Eddie Alvarez seemed to be getting hit a few times by RDA in that first opening couple minutes. However, Eddie was landing a couple punches, and then boom, he landed a right hand, which sent RDA on wobbly legs, as Conor likes to say it, and ended up getting that first-round knockout win. That was the first time we've seen him get a first-round knockout, or in general just a finish, since Shinya Aoki. No. Well, I'm way incorrect. I'm using the UFC's website, so that's pretty embarrassing. Well, no, then again, I don't know. I can't think of what it was. But take a look. I'll pull it up. It was not Shinya. What did I say?
Crusher? Was it Crusher? Was that the Crusher
fight?
It was
Patricky
That was one of the craziest fights ever. Crusher, Tatsuya Kawajiri, and Eddie Alvarez.
Yeah,
that
fight was crazy. I will never forget that fight. Awesome fight. I didn't see it. Of course, I wasn't a fan then in the day, but I watched it as soon as I got Fight Pass, and I also saw some replays on TV of it. Absolutely crazy fight. Like, that's one of my favorites that I've seen, especially that's not a UFC fight. That was back in Dream, I think, which is pretty crazy. So, yeah, when it comes to Eddie, he's decent with his striking. We saw it with RDA. An affair against somebody like Conor McGregor. Also, one more thing to point out, when he fought RDA, he had his back up against the cage a lot. Now, moving to Conor McGregor, that's one thing that Conor does very, very well, and that's trying to back his opponent up towards the cage. Conor is very, very good at putting the pressure on and being the aggressor in the fights. Now, we haven't really seen how Conor does at a lighter weight class because the past 2 fights Conor has had have been at the welterweight division, and both of those were against Nate Diaz, one which he lost by submission, which Eddie does have a few submission wins on his resume back in his earlier days, but none too recently. However, I think he is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Despite that, Conor, the last time that we saw him fight at a lower weight class was when he was the featherweight champion and won it against Jose Aldo in 13 seconds. So we really haven't had a lot of time to see him recently, but we do know of the stuff that Conor has done in the past, and we do know what Conor did in the Nate Diaz fights, and that's pushing Nate Diaz back against the cage, being able to time his shots very perfectly, use combinations. He's very good at combinations, also very diverse with his kicks. But we do know, as I mentioned with Eddie Alvarez, that Eddie is very, very good with takedowns. And if he can take this fight to the ground, he might be able to find success from possibly a scramble of Conor trying to get up to the feet. Eddie might be able to find a submission in a scramble that happens later on in the fight. But we'll have to see how Conor shows up at the weigh-ins. We'll also have to see how he fares cardio-wise, because I know he kind of struggled in that Nate Diaz fight, and this is his debut at lightweight. So we're going to have to see a fantastic fight. Man, I don't want to make a prediction because I'm a huge fan of both of these guys. I've been following Conor since he joined the UFC, and I've also been watching Eddie Alvarez. I guess I think it was the first fight I ever watched Eddie fight in. I think might have been I don't know if it was the Patricky fight, but it was definitely the Michael Chandler fight, the split decision win that he had. Crazy fight. I'm going to make a final decision now because it's that time. And I'm going to have to go with Conor McGregor in this fight. I think that Conor is going to be able to just be a little more diverse. I think that he's going to be able to wait until Eddie kind of slows down with takedowns. I think that he's going to be training very hard to stuff, or he probably has been training hard to stuff them. And if he can do that, I think that Conor can find some success on the feet, especially against Eddie Alvarez. That's just my opinion. But then again, Eddie has a great shot at winning this fight. Very, very close fight. Can't wait for it. One of the best fights that not only one of the best fights we've had, but one of the best fight cards that we've had of 2016. Definitely the best fight card we've had, probably of all time. Can't wait for this fight. I'm going to go Conor McGregor, a technical knockout in the second round. However, I might sound crazy saying that. Then again, Eddie has a good shot. So I'd like to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, I'm lost in this fight. So Paulo, as usual, you can go first. You can go second. I mean, Conor McGregor, Eddie Alvarez.
It sounds weary. Yeah, no, I think it either ends with Eddie submitting Conor in the ground or Conor knocking him out, because I don't think Eddie's gonna be able to answer that final bell if he can't finish Conor on the ground, because, well, wrestling needs a lot of cardio, okay? And I know Eddie is a cardio machine. I know that. He's got heart for days and he can take shots and get hurt and still come back. But Conor McGregor is on another level, man. This guy hits if you thought he hit hard at 145, I think the full brunt of his punching power is when he's at 155, because that's his optimal weight class. And you've seen a lot of his knockouts from 155. Guys are just like, I'm sorry, Jeremy Stevens, but Conor McGregor does not just TKO guys. Conor McGregor can knock guys stiff. And Eddie Alvarez, as we know, this guy, he's developing himself a boxer's chin. He gets rocked a lot. He's been in a lot of wars, so he isn't exactly the most bulletproof fighter right now. So I think Conor can put him on his feet here. Probably the second or third round at that time. Yeah, I think that's what's gonna happen. I think Eddie's gonna take him down a couple of times. He's not going to be able to finish him, maybe because he gets a bit too excited, tries to go for a finish, goes for broke, and that's not going to happen. And Conor's going to get up and knock him out. Although if Eddie rides him out for 5 rounds in one of the most boring fights ever, the most disappointing fights ever, you can bet that everyone's going to turn on Eddie, and he's going to replace Tyron Woodley up there as the most hated UFC fighter of all time. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think something's going to happen in there where it's going to affect both fighters emotionally. Maybe Conor says or does something during the weigh-ins, or maybe he tweets something. Maybe the rowdy New York crowd and the rowdy Irish fans in there gets to Eddie's head or something. But I have a feeling like Eddie's not going to do what he did to Anthony Pettis here and basically made an exciting fighter not so exciting because he fought extremely smart. I think there'll be a time where he's gonna go for broke or go take a risk, and it's gonna backfire on him. So I got Conor by knockout in the third round.
This is a great fight, and I know both well, and I still struggle to break it down. I really have no idea what is going to happen. Both guys, well, Eddie Alvarez specifically is well-rounded. He's good on the feet. That's how he won the belt in July against RDA. Finished him with strikes in the first round. It's super impressive stuff. And the wrestling is how he beats his other opponents, Anthony Pettis specifically. Giblert was a bit more on the feet, but as was kind of implied earlier, he did mix in his takedowns a little bit, I believe, in that fight as well. Not as much as Pettis. So if Alvarez goes in here smart, he looks for the takedown sooner rather than later. Why stand with Conor when you can probably get him down to the ground and just outpoint him, hold him down and outpoint him? Honestly, this could turn into, now that I'm thinking about it, this could turn into a pretty boring fight, a grind fest, and Alvarez could retain the lightweight title. And as Paul mentioned, maybe he'll be another hated UFC champion after that. It would be awful if that's the case, because he put on some amazing performances, but I wouldn't be shocked out of my mind. All of that said, I'm kind of in the same boat as Paolo. Something tells me that Alvarez won't go in there looking to make it boring, looking to take down Conor repeatedly. Maybe he scores one takedown, maybe McGregor gets up, but I think this is going to be a stand-up affair for a solid 20 minutes of the 25-minute fight, maybe even more. I don't think we're going to see a boring grind fest in this UFC 205 main event. Just a part of me is saying that. I don't know why, but I just think Alvarez is going to look to stand with Conor McGregor. And that is going to be a mistake. Kind of like Gastelum and Cerrone. Although Alvarez is a little bit thicker because he's the natural lightweight, McGregor has been fighting at he has been fighting welterweight recently, but he's forced the featherweight champion, and his biggest wins have come at the 145-pound division. He's actually taller. No, not taller, but the reach. A 5-inch reach advantage for Conor McGregor. That is huge in this fight, in my opinion. The height is the same, interestingly enough. Similar to Cerrone-Gastelum matchup. Cerrone's kind of moving up in weight. He did so recently anyways, and he's significantly physically bigger than Kelvin Gastelum, height and reach-wise. McGregor has a few more tools on the feet. Alvarez, more known just as a boxer. McGregor can use his kicks. He has a great lead left, of course, and then great inside leg kicks and high kicks, and a large, diverse on the feet for Conor McGregor. Alvarez is very, very powerful on the feet, and he's very precise on the feet, very good, lots of output, but he just doesn't – he's lacking the tools. He has he doesn't – just it's simple as that. Conor McGregor has a few more strikes that he is good with, in my opinion. I really am at a loss for words. I don't know what's going to happen. Conor McGregor's cardio is not that good. We've seen that in his pair of welterweight fights. He gassed a little bit in the first ATS fight. Definitely didn't definitely gassed a little bit in the second ATS fight. But the reason I'm not saying Eddie Alvarez is gonna grind, or not grind, but the reason I'm not saying Eddie Alvarez will for sure weather the storm of Conor McGregor and win in the later rounds. That could be possible. That could happen. But the reason I don't think that'll necessarily happen is because Conor McGregor finds a way to win. He finds a second win. Remember the Nate Diaz fight? He looked terrible in the third round. Nearly got finished. Fourth round, looks fresh, looks ready to go, wins that round, drops the next, but still wins the fight. He somehow found a second win. He in between rounds, the break was possibly fight changing for him. Something happened in his corner, and he came out a bit more guns blazing than he was in the third round. Could that happen again? Very possible. Eddie Alvarez's chin is another little concern, in my opinion. Eddie Alvarez, he's taken a lot of damage in his UFC, in not a UFC career, but overall his career. He's taken a lot of shots, known to get into wars and scraps. Of course, Michael Chandler fights. When will Eddie Alvarez's chin go? It'll happen eventually. Will this be the fight? I don't know for sure. Maybe, maybe not. We will find out. Conor McGregor is going to be my pick. I will complete the hat trick by picking the notorious Conor McGregor. I don't think he finishes Eddie Alvarez. I think Eddie's chin will hold up enough in this fight. It'll look a lot like the second ATS fight. This fight is going to go 5 rounds. This fight is going to be a fight of the year candidate or a snooze fest. It's not going to be in between. It's going to be one or the other. Alvarez is either going to grind out McGregor, or McGregor is going to outstrike Alvarez over the course of 25 minutes in the fight on the feet for a unanimous decision win. Alvarez will have his moments. He could hurt Conor. He could have Conor backing up. Who knows? I'm interested to see how Conor looks at lightweight for the first time in the UFC. He didn't look fantastic at welterweight, so we will see. Nate Diaz did what was bigger than Conor. In this case, he is bigger than Eddie. This will be interesting. Eddie Alvarez, Conor McGregor, I cannot wait. My pick here, though, is Conor McGregor to make history by becoming the first ever UFC fighter to hold 2 belts simultaneously. That is just an insane thing to say. My pick here is Conor McGregor. Now, let's predict for the second time here on the program. Let's predict who will be the fight of the night winner and the performances. Who are we going to give our fight of the night and performances to? Wes, you brought this to the show, so I'll start with you first. Go ahead with your performances and then your fight.
Thanks, man. Yeah, this is something that I've always been a big fan of doing, especially afterwards, too. I like to choose what I think was the best fight and the best performances of the night. Man, I got to choose something. So we're going to go with performances first. I think the first performance is going to go to the winner of Tyron Woodley versus Stephen Thompson. I don't think that's going to be a fight of the night contender, but I do think that the winner of that fight is going to do something If they get a knockout, it's going to be a very, very impressive knockout and something that's going to catch the eyes of a lot of people. So I think the winner of that fight, so I have Woodley picked, so I think Woodley's going to get a performance bonus in this one. But then again, it's close. And then I think the second bonus, just taking a quick look, is going to be possibly the winner of Chris Weidman versus Yoel Romero. I think maybe Yoel Romero, if he can get a first-round TKO, something impressive, because he does have a lot of power and explosion that he likes to output in the first round. So maybe that, or the winner of Conor McGregor and Eddie Alvarez. And since I have Conor McGregor, I think Conor is going to get a bonus in that fight. Fight of the night. I think it's going to be close between two or three fights. First is either going to be McGregor versus Alvarez. If Alvarez is going to be risky, can't get those takedowns, be on the feet, that might be pretty fun. So that is definitely going to be a contender, possible fight of the year. Joanna versus Carolina, I was thinking about that, but then again, I think Joanna is going to be able to take over. Weidman versus Romero, definitely going to be a contender in that fight. That might be the fight to watch of the night, for fight of the night. And I think another fight that might have a good chance.
You might as well just read off the whole card while you're
I got one more. I'm so sorry. I should have limited myself, but I'll say one more. Thiago Alves versus Jim Miller on UFC Fight Pass. That's going to be an awesome fight too.
Yeah, that's actually that could be up for fight of the night.
Everyone gets awards.
Now, Paolo, go ahead. Performances, fight of the night. Who are you giving your 50? Maybe not you personally, but who's going to get a $50K bonus on Saturday?
Let's go with no fight of the nights and 4 performance of the nights.
Okay,
it's going to be one of those cards. So whoever wins the last two main events, Donald Cerrone, I think he's going to finish Gastelum in impressive fashion, in video game combo fashion, and Vicente Luque to submit Bilal Muhammad at some point. There you go.
You're missing 2, or did you say 2?
What do you mean? Oh, I already said the last 2 main events. The first 2 main events. Whoever wins, Alvarez, McGregor, Woodley, Thompson, and then
I gotcha.
Vicente Luque and Don Cerrone.
Perfect. Now, my performances are going to go to Yoel Romero to finish Chris Weidman with strikes midway through the fight. And my second performance of the night will go to Donald Cerrone to also finish Kelvin Gastelum via strikes midway through the fight. And on my fight of the night, it's going to be the people's main event, Eddie Alvarez, Conor McGregor. That's going to be a war, in my opinion. Maybe they prove me wrong. Maybe Alvarez gets the takedowns, as I said, and turns it into a boring fight. Fingers crossed that's not what happens, but you will see. As far as Romero and Cerrone, Romero, if you pick, Weidman could win. I don't know. Cerrone pretty confident in that one. And if the main event turns out boring, maybe Miller and Thiago Alves. Thiago could also get a performance. Luke maybe as well if he wins. But my definite picks here are Romero, Cerrone, and then main event for fight of the night. Now moving on. Let's get on to our DraftKings teams. Paolo, you're the king of DraftKings. Do you have one ready to go?
Yes, and I should say that I'm actually very upset about last week because I had, again, 6 winning fighters, but I forgot to enter more than one competition, so I think I won like $50 or something, which was like the top 3 prize or something. But I forgot to enter it into a lot of so I could have won a lot of money last week, and I'm really pissed off that I didn't. I don't know why. I guess because I made it when we were doing the show, and afterwards it just sort of slipped my head. Whatever. Let's just make it back this week. So this week I got Conor McGregor to knock out Eddie Alvarez. Then we got Joanna Jędrzejczyk to completely beat up Karolina Kowalkiewicz and get a finish, or at least 5 rounds of a lot of striking in there. Donald Cerrone, enough said, he's gonna put on another school, 8,900. And then I got Chookagian to upset Carmouche. She's actually the underdog here, if I'm not mistaken. No, she's a slight favorite, but she's a really kind of affordable. And 2 underdogs, 2 fighters who are at the 7,000 range, because you need at least 2 of them if you want to score big.
MJ.
Woodley and MJ. Yep, Woodley and MJ. I got Woodley and MJ. Woodley to knock out Stephen Thompson, and Michael Johnson to knock out Khabib. My God, man, this is wishful thinking. But oh my God, Michael Johnson would be my favorite fighter if he knocks out Khabib. And I'm like, yeah. And then they can just cut Khabib after that. So yeah.
Yeah, because Khabib, who does he have wins over, right? Only RDA before the title run. Wes, do you have a team ready to go? I won't cry myself to sleep if you don't, but hopefully you do.
Well, yes, I do. I happen
Perfect.
to for the first time, and I actually have it ready. I'm going with, here's my lineup, Tyron Woodley. I think Tyron's going to land a right hand that's going to starch Thompson and get one of those, maybe a flash knockout or just a brutal knockout win like he did against Robbie. I got Conor McGregor. I think Conor's going to be able to get a first or second round TKO. I have second round. I have Yoel, Soldier of God, Romero. I think he might be able to get a first round finish over Weidman if he can. I also have Joanna Champ. I think she's going to be able to put on a brutal showing over Carolina. Don't think she has a chance. I also have Donald Cerrone. I think Donald Cerrone is going to get a finish over Kelvin Gastelum. And lastly, couldn't really come up with another one, so I went with a little bit different, Vicente Luque. I think Luque has a decent shot in this fight to possibly get a submission. So I'm kind of thinking, maybe he does have some good jiu-jitsu, so he has a shot in that. So that's my lineup.
Awesome. Now, my lineup for DraftKings on this team, my lineup last week actually almost did well, but I had one guy that lost. Let's see. Let me just I forget who lost. Oh, it was Charles Oliveira that lost, so he kind of ruined my lineup, but it is what it is. Moving on, my lineup this week, Yoel Romero, Conor McGregor, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Thiago Alves, and my underdog pick here, besides Romero, is Michael Johnson. I'm picking Khabib, but I think Johnson has a very good chance of winning. As I said, I think Khabib probably grinds it out, but I'm going to go out on a limb there. I got a lot of guys that I'm confident in. Romero, kind of confident in McGregor, not so much. Drana, definitely confident. Wonderboy, pretty confident. And Alvarez, confident. So I'm liking those 4 picks, or those 5 picks for sure. And then Johnson's kind of the throwaway one that could end up coming back and doing well for me. So that's my 6-fight DraftKings lineup. And that caps off UFC 205. We're going into the 2-hour mark. We're at, what are we at here now? Just, I think just over an hour and a half. So not as long as 2 hours. But, oh no, we're at 150. So keep rambling for 10 minutes. We'll hit 2 hours. Hopefully we will end before 2 hours. Anything else you guys want to mention, or shall we get on to shout-outs and plugs and stuff like that?
I'm fine with moving on. Covered it pretty well.
No, there's a Bellator card that's happening. It's a rematch between
I like it, yes.
Oh, is it really?
Lima. And I kind of just wanted to think Lima, the first fight, Lima was injured, and that's why there was a steep decline in his price on the betting lines. I mean, everyone was on Team Lima, and then all of a sudden some people got wind of the injury and bet the crap out of Koreshkov. And would you know it? Douglas Lima no-shows during the fight, gets wrestled by the striker, the Russian striker. I mean, a lot of these Russian strikers are really known for their wrestling. But yeah, no. So I'm interested to see what a fully healthy Douglas Lima can do in this fight. But that's probably it. Everything else is pretty much UFC 205. Oh, yeah, and that fight is on Thursday. It's not on the usual Friday Bellator. It's on a Thursday.
And that's probably because, well, I don't know for sure, but that could be because it's actually Bellator's debut in Israel. I actually kind of am intrigued that they're going to Israel. They're going to a lot of these markets that UFC hasn't gone to, Israel, Italy. So props to Bellator for kind of getting into some of these European and Asian, Middle Eastern markets that the UFC has yet to venture out into. Noad Lahad also is on the card, former UFC fighter, so good to see him on there. Georgi Karakhanyan. That's actually a good Bellator card. Quickly, main event. I'm going to go Andrei Koreshkov in that one. Still, I think he'll do well against Douglas Lima. Douglas now healthy fully as far as we know, so that's interesting, but I'm still going to go the Russian to retain his welterweight championship. Wes, do you care to give a pick or not so much?
I'll give my pick. I knew Andre was fighting soon, but I had no idea that it's tomorrow. I had no idea there was a Bellator card tomorrow, but I'm going Andrei Koreshkov. I think he's going to be able to get a unanimous decision. Really good striker. Didn't watch their first fight. I was busy when that happened. I think
I was in Toronto with.
you were in Toronto
with Paolo.
Oh, nice. That's pretty cool. And here I am.
Not the same day, but same
yeah.
week or whatever.
Here I am, just sitting all by myself. No, I'm just kidding. We're also gonna see Noah Lahat get flying knee knocked out for the third time in his career. And besides that, Georgi Karkakian, he's going to pick up a win. And I see that Lena is making her debut from Ukraine. So she's pretty good. She had a pretty prestigious kickboxing career and also some in MMA. So I'll go with Lena in that fight too. I didn't know there was a card, but pretty cool. Pretty cool.
I feel we're just dragging the show on to hit the 2-hour mark. I think this will be the first time we do. So, yeah, I mean, it's Conor McGregor. I guess we can do whatever Conor McGregor wants. Now, that is the end of episode 50. Up before the battle, biggest card of UFC history coming up. This will be an insane weekend. For me, we have Remembrance Day / Veterans Day on the Friday, and then some sort of day off on Monday. So this is a 4-day weekend that I'll need. 2 days after 205 to process everything that goes down. I'll need it. Thanks to you guys as always for coming.
We had a holiday.
What was that?
We have a holiday on Monday?
That's what school kids get, Paolo. Go back to school and you'll get it too.
No, it's a PA day then.
PD day. I think, I don't know, Professional Development Day. That's what it's called.
Canadian.
Teachers go to school. We don't go.
Not a real holiday. Okay.
No. It's definitely not a real holiday.
That's all I did. I don't know.
Yeah, we have Winnipeg. We have Winnipeg-wide holidays for if you didn't know. Anyways, enough rambling about Winnipeg. Winnipeg sucks. Paolo, let the people know where they can check you out on Twitter, on social media, where they can find your writing, your drafting stuff, everything you got going on in the world of MMA.
Yeah, so just check me out at GoPaoloMMA.
Go ahead.
Twitter account. Promise you I won't be tweeting any more politics. I might retweet a couple that are funny, but just funny. No more serious posts and ranting. You can follow my other account at gopalo.com. Write about travel, superhero movies. I was in Peru the other time. I'm going to be posting those photos up. So there's a lot going on outside MMA, in case you didn't notice. And I've got a couple of articles coming out for Sportsnet, finally. 2 of them, actually. I'm going to break down the Woodley and Thompson fight, keys to victory, and the prelims for all you Canadian fans and Sportsnet subscribers. So come check that out at Sportsnet.ca pretty soon.
Super quickly, you mentioned superheroes. Have you checked out Doctor Strange yet?
Yes, I have. And I have to say, as a comic book fan, my standards are pretty high. Special effects are really cool. Go see it on IMAX, see 3D IMAX. You're not going to be disappointed, but if you're expecting something mind-blowing, don't be expecting something too mind-blowing because it's typical run-of-the-mill Marvel movie, but it's got really cool effects.
Perfect. Effects are usually what I see movies for anyway, so that's good to hear. Wes, let the people know where they can check you out on Twitter, on other social media. Maybe you're still on MySpace. I don't know. You're writing. You do a little bit here and there. You do fights to make, things like that. Let the people know everything you got going on in the world of mixed martial arts.
Yeah, no MySpace, unfortunately, but you can find me in the mixed martial arts realm on Twitter at AllThatMMA. I love doing all my stuff over there. I'll be tweeting nonstop this weekend about UFC 205. So you want to go follow me over there on Twitter. That's at AllThatMMA. I'm going to have a lot of fun this weekend with that. Also, you can find some of my writing at MMAsucka.com. I most recently did a matchmaking for last week's card, Dos Anjos vs. Ferguson, which you can go check that out. And you will expect an article to come up on Sunday night following the fights or just sometime on Sunday during the day about UFC 205, my matchmaking suggestions for that. And that's over at MMAsucka.com. And, yeah, that's pretty much it from me. I also, by the way, saw Doctor Strange. Not a big Marvel fan, unfortunately. However, I have seen a few Marvel movies, and they have impressed me every time that I've seen them. I also learned that I think, what was it? Iron Man? That is not Marvel. Am I correct?
That's Marvel.
Okay, no, then it's Batman. Is that right?
Batman.
Is it Batman?
Yes.
That's not Marvel. Right. I've seen that.
That's
I like
DC
that.
Comics.
Yes, I learned that. Loved that. Loved
I think we should
Iron
do
Man.
a new podcast where Paolo and I just teach Wes all about superheroes.
That would be perfectly fine because I have a lot of brushing up to do. I heard there's like a Wonder Woman movie coming out or something like that. Am I right? Yeah. So I watched Doctor Strange and was like a huge fan of that. I thought that was really cool. Just like a lot of stuff going on. Really cool movie. Especially from a guy that doesn't watch that much Marvel. That's it from me. Thanks again, guys, for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Well, you can find me on the Twitter as always at NickUFC. Always down to chat about anything you want. Usually MMA, much about anything else. So I don't know. Test me. See what I know. See what I'm learning at school. I'll tell you, it's not a lot. You can find me on Twitter at NickUFC. Find all of my writing at bloodyelbow.com. You can check out my other podcast, The MMA Circus, on Bloody Elbow, on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Pocket Cast, on Google Play. Host that each and every week with Andrew's Clown Kid Lawrence. He returned to the show this week. He was gone for 2 weeks. One was because Hangouts deleted our show, and the next he actually went to see Doctor Strange, coincidentally enough. But he's back. Episode 84 just posted on Bloody Elbow 2 hours ago. We have one guest on the show, UFC middleweight contender Derek Brunson. Headlines UFC Melbourne Fight Night 101 against Robert Whittaker later this month. Always great catching up with Derek Brunson. My writing, haven't had too many interview pieces out in the past few days, but I'm hoping to have at least 4 out by the weekend ahead of 205, not related to 205, but just that time frame. So look out for that, bloodyelbow.com. You can find us there. Thank you guys, as always, for coming on. Thank you guys for listening. And with that, enjoy the fights.